Alright, hit the button. Making a video. Anyway, response video to a conversation between Laura Layla and maybe warbles on a lot or whatever. Anyway, risk assessment. eh, Um, risk acceptance, and then there's risk assignment. So I guess it sort of depends on whether you're accepting a risk for yourself, whether you're imposing it on somebody else, or and whether your assessment is some sort of realistic thing, like you're really trying to recognize or understand whether something's a good idea or a bad idea. And I guess I would argue that in most cases, when people accept a risk, they're not really accepting the risk. They're accepting some sort of hope, some sort of wishful thinking. Um, they're not really playing by the rules. And the assessment is inaccurate of the risk, and they're often assigning it to somebody else because that's really easy to do. And their assessment is often just wrong, and so they're accepting something that they haven't really um, scrutinized or evaluated realistically. I guess the first point I would make, I'll do this in pieces, just what comes to mind, is that the dead don't get to testify, so the losers often aren't heard from. The people who lose the risk and say, "Gee, that sure wasn't worth it," the dead guys on Mount Everest kind of thing. I'm sure there's some of them who'd say, "Oh, it was great fun anyway," but obviously you don't hear from the ones who would say, I really should have given that a little more thought and come up with some better idea, something else to do with my time. And isn't that really the equation? Isn't most of these conversations about risk have to do with some kind of adventuring or some sort of challenge, some sort of accomplishment that maybe just needs some perceptual rewiring, not necessarily something that you actually have to do. So anyway, longer intro than I intended, but sort of my style. I was thinking maybe I'll do some painting, talk, and then I could paint, and then I could paint, and I would just say, this is where I am, this is where I got so far, something like that. But we'll see how things go. Trying a different little lens on here. It does look a little crooked, actually. But we'll see what happens. Till next time. Such. Alright, I'm back. Yeah. So, we'll talk a little about risk. I mean, I've talked about it before, but I mean, there's this, you could look at it as, this is just most of what we need out of life. Most of the stuff we take a risk for, most of it, isn't the necessities, isn't food and water and a house, obviously some of that has risk involved. Driving to the store has a risk. But obviously most of the risks we take are for some sort of other thing. And I've sort of made the example that, maybe if when we saw the Olympics, if we really saw all the people that were killed, with nice little, training, and all the ones paralyzed, and all the ones whose life was, they ruined their relationships with their family or their wife or their kids, and all the other tragedy that went with this gold medal-y thing, maybe we would say it's not worth it. So we're not really assessing the risk in the sense that we're just taking, and we're paying people, and so that's the other part of this thing, is the reward part, and the lottery kind of mentality that, when we're desperate, we'll hope. And we'll cling to desperate hopes. Me even making these videos is sort of a hope thing. There's not much evidence that human beings can be communicated with, that you can just talk to them and say, look, this is how I understand things, you have a counter argument, blah blah blah. No, I can't really do that. So there's not much hope of this going anywhere, and yet I do it because, the risk of dying from it or being horribly hurt by it is low. I mean, it's obviously occupying time, and that I could use for pursuits that might be more personally fulfilling. But in a world where, see, this is again where it comes down to sometimes the reward isn't like a pot of gold, the reward is not a horror. And that's what makes it even trickier, that sometimes you take a risk to avoid something worse. So you're accepting a risk of some harm to avoid a risk of even bigger harm. And that's where it gets kind of complicated. So I could argue that, yeah, obviously if there's not much to live for, if you can't live for some kind of purpose, like you're going to actually accomplish some sort of harm minimization, then there's some sort of reason to stay engaged and to play along. But if just to play football or to watch football or golf or whatever the thing would be, to have birthday parties, to engage in the typical gameplay of life, like I'm going to have a happy moment and therefore we will risk to have a happy moment. Yeah, that I'm not going to likely do by volition. So anyway, I didn't want to get to, didn't want to personalize it, but I ended up doing that, didn't I? Well, anyway, yeah. So, but I guess the argument to be made is do people really acknowledge risk in any realistic way? And most of what people do is hope the more dominant, and luck. People think they're going to be lucky. They feel it in their bones. Some kind of crap like that. I mean, it just is voodoo. People live on this voodoo. There's nothing terribly real here. Just a lot of wishing and hoping. And again, we don't hear from the dead. The war dead, if they could show up. Certainly the future victims of global warming. We're not hearing them yet. The future victims of even the financial collapse that seems inevitable because we've sold the future into servitude to the 1% who owns a ton of these little slips of paper say I owe you on them. And unless we resolve that, they're going to have to resolve it. They're going to have to decide to, kill 1 billion people or pay the rich. Yeah, they're going to have to decide, and we know what they're going to decide to do because they're idiots. Preposterous idiots. I guess I'm speaking probably to you. You're probably one of the idiots. Probably. The odds are there's only like 15 decent people on Earth. So far, that's all I've counted. And even they, have their days where I could just punch them in the teeth. Anyway, so more if necessary and such. Alright, we're back. Finishing up, summing up. So this is sort of the subject when you come down to it. This is once you start talking about risk versus reward. When you get into all this subjective psychobabble bullshit, there's no objective standards except the sensible standard that all we're after in the end is a sensation, a feeling of accomplishment, as I've said in other videos. And, the specifics of that sensation, how it's derived, really aren't all that important. Sorry about the noise. So there's a risk assessment, picking up these little sharp lids. What the snow hides. Anyway, yeah, so, I don't know why the cat's so stupid. I mean, not that cat, but that cat. They just can't figure out that there's a full dish over here. Yes. It's funny. Well, they're all scared of each other's territory in a way. one cat gets, see, look, he gets along with everybody. He gets along with everyone. But that one and the other one don't get along at all. Oh, they're everywhere. So anyway, where was I? So yeah, I have cut myself many times. Liability of feeding a cat. So there's a risk assessment. You know, expose yourself to cat diseases, and I probably have that, whatever it is, that microbe that fucks up your brain, and you know, makes you want to go find some cat urine to sleep next to. Yeah, does that to rats anyway. Oh, big duty pile here. Oh, clean that up too. Ugh, cats. Kind of a pain in the ass. So anyway, risk is so yeah. So nothing's really worth it. You know, because we can simplify the game by simplifying the agenda. Change the agenda, make the game easy and simple, uncomplicated, and that's what we should do. So, boy, am I gonna... So anyway, hey Santino, what are you doing? You don't need to be going over here. Stay out of trouble there, buddy. Yeah, stay out of trouble. Yeah, so I don't need to drag this out. I'll be making noise soon anyway. So anything else? Yeah, so warning code, warning, risk. So anyway, and the whole fact that people are so adventurous anyway, you know, that they will risk so much for so little in so many circumstances, you know, it just does reveal that this game is all about some sort of ego crap, you know, that has no credibility. So anyway, enough of the video. Till the next time, I was going to do some other blah blah blah, the new and improved, edited blah blah, and then forget. Next time maybe. Yeah, next time. See how things go. Well, it doesn't matter. Yeah, more explicit even than this. Yeah, more explicit than this. More organized, let's say. But this was okay. 3 parts. We got the basic idea. There's the assessment of risk. There's the assignment of risk to somebody else. And there's acceptance of risk for yourself. Okay, enough.